As part of metrics team product portfolio, I'm responsible for internal audit management. I'm also responsible for issue management. And today I'm here with my colleague Shreyank Kamath. He heads the business GRC portfolio from the product management perspective. And today we are going to talk about operational resilience. And before we get into the topic, let me start with a quote which says, "Everyone deals with adversity. It is totally how you bounce back from it," right? And looking at how the risks are evolving, we believe that operational resilience should be a weapon of choice. And during this presentation, we are going to see some of the examples, some case studies, and what we believe at Metrics team should be your way of defining operational resilience. And then we're going to start with a demonstration of the product capabilities, and maybe we'll open forum to have more interactive session, right? All right, so quick agenda. We are going to look at the current market situation, which defines why operational resiliency is important for all of us, for all the enterprises we work with. We'll also see what operational resiliency is. We will go through a few case studies. What are the upcoming acts and regulations that are very important for you to start thinking about operational resiliency, or maybe define it in a more structured way in case if you have not yet. We'll see what are the way forward. How do we as vendors, how do we as different enterprises should collaborate and move forward to have a better operational resiliency in place, and then we are going to see a quick demo, right? All right, so let us look at some of the current market situations. All of us know that with the current challenges, the GRC overview, or the way GRC has been defined for different organizations, has been shifting, right? Last 3 years have been very difficult for individuals, for countries, for enterprises, right? And when we see some of the evolving challenges in the market, we see that now every day we see one or the other different type of risk. Like we started with pandemic almost 3 years back, then we saw the Ukraine war. Now we are looking at the economic crisis that the companies are going through. We are looking at hostile acquisition of technology companies. So these risks are evolving. We really don't know where we are going, and every day it feels like that, when is it going to end? But when we open the news, we see something or the else coming up which is going to define future. Then there are persistent challenges. Organizations, when they see there are risks that are getting evolved, they have to have a mitigation in place to fight these upcoming challenges or the challenges that are ongoing. And sometimes they have to come up with the traditional way of managing it. Sometimes they have to be very innovative in terms of how these challenges should be handled. And I think the hybrid work culture, work from home, was one of such example where the enterprises had to define an innovative way of working and ensuring that the businesses run as is, right? And then the coping strategies, where all of us are working with different vendors, all of us are defining different processes, all of us are using different technologies to ensure that we move forward and we don't let our business get impacted. Now, understanding connected risk is very important, and I think yesterday there were a lot of sessions that were talking about connected GRC, connected risk. Now, this diagram is going to define it in a very structured way. Now, if you take an example, let me start with third-party risk. Assume that in your organization, I believe that everyone works with third parties, right? I always like this quote, though it is not relevant, but I'm going to talk about it. It says, "Do what you do the best, partners are the rest. Partners for the rest," right? So that means everyone is dealing with third parties to ensure that they succeed and they don't get into things where they don't have a lot of expertise. For example, Metrics team, right? We build GRC solutions, so we are your partners. And when it comes to the third party risk, just ensure that if your third party is resulting in risk for your organization, it is going to impact a lot of other areas. You can have a financial risk, you can have a security and fraud related risk, you can have reputational risk. So that way all the risks are interconnected. And that's where it is very important to have a strategy that looks at the risk in a more interconnected way and address it as a whole, right? Not in a siloed way. Now, this is where operational resilience is going to play a very important role, and we are going to see how it's going to do that. Now, before getting into operational resilience, I think the definition almost everywhere talks about disruptions, right? When operational resiliency is getting discussed, the first word comes to the mind is disruption. Now, what is a disruption, right? When it comes to the technology side, or when we talk about startups, I mean, disruption is always seen in a positive way, right? That company is disrupting. That means they are getting something new to the market, right? They are solving some of the problems that were never solved before, right? But in terms of operational resilience, disruption is seen as a negative event that is caused either by man-made disasters or they can occur naturally, right? I mean, force of God, cyber attacks, competition, right? A big threat, litigations. So these are some of the disruptions that the organizations face day-to-day basis, right? And how do organizations manage it well? And this is not something new, right? We all have been managing disruptions by ensuring that the weaknesses around processes, people, systems, external events are handled in a better way, right? So still for operational resilience, the way you cater disruption, the definition remains the same, but maybe you require more holistic view of looking at the risk, more holistic way of looking at interconnected risk to address the challenges and mitigate the same. Okay, now that we have seen what disruptions are, let us see what operational resiliency means. Now, it can be a bit different for each and every organization, and if you're going to search for operational resilience, on the web, you're going to find different definitions of it, right? But at Metric Stream, we believe an organization who's following operational resilience have a structured way of answering the disruptions, right? Responding to the disruptions. They have a better way of retrospecting. They have a better way of doing a course correction and then move forward with their day-to-day activities, right? We also believe that it is a principle that helps an organization to thrive on risk, right? So in the previous session, you must have heard that you cannot reduce risk, right? You can just optimize the risk. And that is where we are saying that you have to accept the risk, have a good mitigation strategy, and then start thriving on it, right? Take those bold moves, go ahead with the new disruptive technologies, new business lines, and move forward with it. All right, so there are two more important concepts when it comes to the operational resiliency, right? The first one is disruption absorption, right? And what does disruption absorption means? The disruption has happened, but how do organizations react to it in a way that they can still move ahead with their normal activities? The business doesn't get impacted. But just think about it. I mean, it's not valid in all the scenarios. Sometimes you will face a difficult challenge when you cannot move with your normal business. Now, what do? The second aspect is recoverability. That means that an impact has happened to you, but how faster you can get back to the normal business that you were doing earlier, right? So these are very important aspects. And when you look for a solution or when you look for a structured approach for your business, these are the two important aspects that you have to keep in mind, right? You cannot just have a disruption absorption methodology, but at the same time forget how do you recover from it, or vice versa. Now, let us look at two interesting case studies, not very new. I mean, all of you are aware of it, but let us start looking at from the lens of operational resilience and how different organizations reacted to it when challenges or the disruptions happened to them. The first one is about NHS, right? National Health Services. You must have heard of it. It's a government-funded health services that is provided in the United Kingdom. And in May 2017, there was a cyber attack that happened. It is not just NHS, but many organizations across the world got impacted. But in this use case, let us talk about what happened at NHS. Now, NHS was attacked by a ransomware called as WannaCry. We really don't know who initiated this ransomware. Many of you may be aware of it. Yeah, so this impacted 60 facilities or 60 trust of NHS, and that just created a chaotic environment. They were not able to understand that what the appointments are. They were not able to go ahead with the planned surgeries. The patients have to be sent to other medical facilities which were not attacked. In fact, the staff had to use pen and paper to audit or keep a track of who's coming in, who's going out. In fact, people have to also start using their mobile phones, doctors, nurses, to start communicating with the patients, because it was an attack which not just impacted their systems, but also impacted their communication channel as well, right? And the reason for this is that NHS had 15-year-old machines which were not supported by Microsoft anymore, and no one actually paid attention to it, and this is where the attackers got a way to get into the system and disrupted NHS. And some estimates says that it costed the UK government almost 90 plus million to recover from this problem. And no one knows that did the government pay to the hackers to retrieve the record, or it was something that was handled, without disclosing the details. So it was something to learn from, because the cyber attack is not something which is new to organization. It is a known fact, and if you have a better way to prepare for it, better way to understand that how are you going to mitigate this disruption and going to come out of it to be to get back to your normal business, I think it is very essential to have an operational resiliency in place. Now let me take another example where operational resiliency, we have seen it in action, and it has worked really well for some of the organizations. And I do have my friends from Japan, and they can correct me in case if some facts are wrong. All right, so we all know that in 2011 March, there was a tsunami that hit Japan, right? It was a very bad impact, and the magnitude of earthquake was around 9.2. Now, there were a couple of nuclear plants that were at the coast of Japan, and these plants were Onagawa, and the second one is Fukushima. Now, Fukushima is something that you have always heard, because it has been in news, because it is known as the second worst disaster after Chernobyl, where the radioactive substance was passed on to the land and the sea. But now we are not here to talk about Fukushima. We are here to talk about Onagawa. So now what happened at Onagawa? Before I get into the detail, let me also talk about that these plants were built almost at the same time in 1960s, but they were managed by different companies, and this is where different company had their own set of operational resiliency to face the challenge. Now, the owners or the company that was running the plant in Onagawa, what they did was, they were looking at the historical information of what is the size of the tide that they can get when tsunami is going to hit Japan. And from the historical information, it was always around 10 foot. But then they were also doing a couple of other things which the company at Fukushima was not doing. They were looking at other countries in the world where the tide has hit, and what was the number of the height of the tide that has hit those countries. So what they did, they, instead of just depending on 10 foot of tide, they built their resistance for ensuring that they can mitigate a tide size of 45 foot. What they also did was they defined the roles and responsibility to the people who manage the plant in a way that they know if something bad happens, how do they react. They had very well defined set of processes to be followed, and to ensure that how do we mitigate a challenge in case if a disaster hit our center. Whereas at Fukushima, it was a different case altogether. They always went ahead with the historical information of 10 foot. They had a natural wall which they demolished to cut down on cost, to keep it on the lower base, and they did not had a very well defined procedure to act in case a natural disaster happens. And then we all know what has happened. Onagawa was able to manage it in a very well defined way, and whereas Fukushima had the disaster happened at their site. So this proves that how operational resiliency does not just depend on the historical events, but you have to think beyond them. You have to always think beyond, what if I get a tide of size 5 foot or a 50 foot in future, right? I have to be prepared for that. And this is where these lessons from the history help us learn that how can we as an organization ensure that we are prepared for the future, and we can ensure that we have a good operational resiliency to bounce back to our normal. Now, let us quickly also look at some of the acts and regulations which are going to drive how you're going to define operational resiliency at your business or for your organization. Now, let us first look at the DORA Act, which is Digital Operational Resiliency Act. This is going to go live in the second half of 2023, and this talks about how the information and communication technology should be managed, right? Now, in case if there is a risk that comes because of the information and communication technology, the first thing is how do you withstand it? The second thing is how do you respond to it? And the third one is how do you recover from it? Now, the European Union have defined the steps in a very structured way. What they say is you need to have a good risk management strategy around the information and communication technologies or any cyber threat that your organization is going to face. They have been talking about that it has to be managed in a very timely way. You have to communicate the interim status, the initial status, and the final status. There has to be periodic testing of your technology, especially the penetration testing. You need to manage your third parties, especially the ones that are not based out of European Union, and the third parties that are located outside, how the data is managed over there and what are their policies to respond. And then sharing the information. I mean, it's all about collaboration. If the companies who have faced the challenges will shy away from sharing the information, the other companies someday will go through the same challenges as well, and they will also not share it. So it has to be a collaborative approach to drive the DORA Act. That's what has been recommended. The other act that we have is around the cryptocurrencies. Now, cryptocurrencies we have seen in the past has impacted a lot of individuals. Many people bought cryptocurrencies, it was unregulated, then the market had a downfall, a lot of people lost their money. Now, we have also seen that related to cryptocurrency, there are a lot of fraudulent activities that happens, right? So this is where the European Union has defined that what organizations have to do to ensure that they protect the losses that the individual faces because of the cryptocurrency. Now, three important aspects: protect the customers, very important; anti-money laundering, from where the money is coming, who's buying the crypto, who's selling the crypto, have a good check on that; and the third one is the climate footprint. Most of you must be aware that blockchain consumes a lot of electricity, right? And that electricity consumption or the power consumption happens because you have to put the records in the blockchain, and that is done using something called as consensus mechanism. Now, this is where, because now ESG is also becoming a core part of your risk, the government wants you to ensure that if you are dealing with a crypto vendor or if there are stable coins as such, then what type of consensus mechanism that they are using, which is not impacting the environment. So carbon and the climate footprint and the environmental impact also is a very big part of the MICA Act that is going to get rolled out. Again, 2024 is when the government believes this should be implemented. Now, the third one and another important and interesting one is called as the AI regulation, again driven by the European Union. It is about how ethical is your AI that you have embedded in your ecosystem, right? Now, it is defined into 4 categories. Some of the risk getting generated from the AI will be unaccepted risk. Now, things that can impact life of an individual, livelihood of an individual, or rights of an individual. If AI can impact that, then it is called as unacceptable risk. Some of the companies of late have implemented AI, and it was taking biased decision because the companies have been working in a very biased way, and AI learns from the historical information, right? So this is where it will be defined as unacceptable. Then high risk, right? Anything that is related to critical infrastructure like transportation, education will be classified as high risk. Impact on not sharing transparency, right? If I'm chatting with a bot, if there's a chat icon on some, say, website, generally people don't understand I'm chatting to a bot or an individual, right? So bringing in transparency will be classified under limited risk. And then you have the minimized risk, which is part of day-to-day applications and different tools we use. For example, the AI-based games, or it could be spam filter. So that's how the AI regulation is going to take care of how the AI should be ethical when you're using it in your organization. Some of the other regulatory focuses, UK, FCA, PRA, Prudential Regulatory Authority, they are focusing on the challenges related to third parties. Now, Germany's public auditors are working on how do you ensure that there's an early detection of risk. In America, Federal Reserve has recently published very interesting paper on operational resiliency. I think everyone should read it. Gives very good perspective. Singapore has the monetary authority of Singapore has now taken tighter control over the technology and information security related risk, and how are they going to mitigate with that. And Australia also, the Prudential Regulatory Authority and Security Association, what they are doing is they are taking care of how the operational resilience should be handled, and they've also published an article recently. I think that's also an interesting article to go through. Now, why we were talking about so many regulations? Because in case if you're not thinking about operational resilience by looking at the historical information, at least start looking from the regulatory aspect, because someday or the other these regulations and acts are going to be enforced, just like GDPR a few years back, and then everyone have to hurry into defining their tools and technology to address or get compliant to this acts and regulations as well. All right, so moving forward, just quickly, this was a very good example from the Bank of International Settlement, and though it is very bank specific operational resiliency principle, but I believe that it is applicable throughout. What they say is, use your existing governance structure, make it strong, make it ensure that it can help you with the future challenges, and you can mitigate it in a better way. It says that operational risk management should not be just looked from the internal risk or the external risk perspective, but look from the connected risk perspective. Business continuity plans should be there, and these plans have to be tested regularly. You can't just define it and just leave it over there. Look for the critical processes, map the impacting items, and just ensure that you are well aware of these mappings, and if something happens to your critical process, what are the other entities that are going to get impacted. Always look for your third party risk, especially when third parties are outside of your country, outside of the jurisdiction. Just think about how you're going to manage the risk coming from the third parties. Incident management, reporting it on time, interim updates, final updates, sharing the information. I think incident management is very critical, and information and communication technology have a stronger process around it, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. Now, that's it. What I have from the operational resiliency perspective. But now I'm going to hand it over to Shreyank, and then Shreyank is going to talk about the metrics team solution and what we have to offer to collaborate with you to take your operational resiliency forward.
Thanks, Vinay. Okay, yeah, so the good news is metrics team now has a product on operational resilience. This was the latest product that we introduced to our product suite. It came out in Euphrates 1. And it might not have all the elements at the moment. This was just the first release, but unlike other vendors, we've seen a lot of our competitors, the way they sell operational resilience is they have a lot of prerequisites. You need to have operational risk implemented. You need to have cyber risk implemented. Only then, your operational resilience program would work. But at least for metrics team, it's not the case. Okay, you can still have operational resilience as an independent product for now. Right, and as you join us in our GRC journey going forward, you implement more products, implement more programs, we all can bring it together to have the entire end-to-end operational resiliency solution, right? Because we didn't want organizations or our customers to stop or restrict themselves from using our operational resiliency product. So I won't have much time today to showcase the entire product. I'm just going to show some highlights. But if there is a need to get into the details, we're always around. Please reach out to us. We can have detailed sessions conducted on the new product that's been introduced. Okay, I'm going to be logging in as the Operational Resiliency Manager. So this is the Metrics Team product login. And the user would land on an overview page where you would have information with respect to the different business services. Right? And again, there's a way to classify whether a particular business service is a critical business service or a critical shared business service, etc. So you can do those classifications. And information about observations that are being reported. You have a set of reports with respect to the impact tolerance statements that have been created, the different observations, scenarios, exercises. So what we have done in terms of scenario analysis is we are allowing you to create a library of scenarios that can be pulled into any scenario exercise. Okay, so this was something that was a gap in Metrics Team. We didn't have anything revolving around scenario analysis. But with this product, we brought in that element too. The other important part that I would like to highlight here is the operational resiliency product is tightly coupled with our business continuity management product, because that's what we see is a good solution in the market, right? Because the end goals for both these programs is helping organizations be resilient. Right. However, the scope of operational resiliency is a lot more compared to business continuity, because business continuity only focuses on the business, whereas operational resiliency has focus on third party, cyber risk, operational risk management, etc. Right. But if you use the operational resiliency product today, you will also see the BCM pieces in there. Right. That's the integration that we're talking about. But if you are already using BCM, you won't get the operational resiliency product. I mean, that has to be installed independently. Okay, so let me open maybe an existing business service. So I would open the payments business service. And the important part of this particular form, right? So if you look at it, it has a lot of related or contextual information that has been added. Right, it has the associated levels. So we're talking about the different assets or functions that can be mapped to a business service, the impact tolerance statements that have been linked to the business service, the scenario exercises that have been completed, any observations that were reported as part of the business service, and any related risk or any kind of evidence that were mapped to this particular business service. Right. So when you're actually initially creating the business service, all this information would be empty. But as you proceed, as you start creating your impact tolerances, your scenario exercises, you have an option to kind of map everything to the business service so that you get an holistic end-to-end view. Right. So that's basically what we're trying to achieve here. Similarly, we have, again, right, different forms to capture the impact tolerance statements. Like if you see, every time I create an impact tolerance statement, I mandatorily have to go and map a business service to it, right? So that there is always that relationship established. Okay, and you can add any other impact areas with respect to, it could be policy, people, customers, safety and soundness of the bank, etc. Again, a lot of things is configurable. This is just a prepackaged product that I'm currently showcasing. Okay, and I think, yeah, given the time that's left, one thing that I wanted to highlight is, I mean, I'm sure most of you are aware that Euphrates 2, which is the next release in Metrics Team, which is planned in March of 2023, it's a big release. We're going to kind of revamp the entire UI, UX of all Metrics Team products. And that's when even the operational resiliency product would undergo a major change. And all I wanted to do is maybe show the operational resiliency dashboard, the end-to-end dashboard on how it's going to look like in the new UI UX, especially with all the products that I initially highlighted. So I just attached it as an attachment because of the laptop, but this is how the new dashboard is going to look like. Okay, maybe increase the size a bit. Okay, so this is how our new UI is going to look like, and it's across all the products, but this is especially for operational resilience. If you see, there are a lot of scorecards at the top which talk about services by criticality, by tolerance, by scenarios, etc. And then there's a lot of information with respect to your third parties, cyber risks. There's a geolocation for identifying incidents that have occurred across, right, and about the risk heat maps, etc. So there's a lot coming up in this area. As I said, we've just introduced our first version of the product. If you really wanted to get into the details, we can have like a detailed demonstration, but there's a lot more to come for operational resiliency. Right? That's all I had to cover. So yeah.
Questions on the I think, operational resilience. One of the key concept is,
Mm-hmm.
we need to map,
Mm-hmm.
such as third party. How metrics a lot of the work struggle with
Okay. Could you maybe highlight more bit about what struggles are you referring to here?
resource mapping.
Okay, it's just about resource mapping.
It's one of them.
Okay.
So how the metrics
Mm-hmm.
digital.
Right. So there are quite a few integrations also that we have planned, which are currently not there. For example, again, CMDB integration is a must, is what we feel for operational resiliency to bring in the assets, etc. So that's something that's planned. There are, again, quite a few integrations. I can maybe actually show you what we have in the roadmap. Maybe that would give you a better picture on what integrations are we actually looking at.
So resource mapping.
Yes, that's correct. CMDB is one of the key ones, and that's something that's coming immediately in the product.
Or as resource mapping.
Yes, that's correct.
Have a better
Yeah,
clarify.
it's going to be challenging. I agree. Any other questions? Any opinions, views about operational resiliency? Yep.
Well, just with this, much customization of scorecards that we don't want to see.
Yeah. So at least with the new UI UX, the Euphrates 2 release, every end user will have an option to move or remove, delete what they would like to see on their landing pages. Today we didn't have it. It was more of an administrative role who could do it for others. But now every user would have an option to kind of remove certain things, add certain things. So we're going to give you a catalog of different reports, scorecards that you're going to have access to. You can just drag and drop what you think is going to be more relevant to you. So that's definitely in the works. Yeah.
So dashboard, what's the big difference? Dashboard. Control.
So yeah, so because see, that's what, right? We say that there are a lot of overlapping elements between these three programs, right? I mean, even if you look at third party or even cyber, you would see there are certain elements on the dashboard that overlap. Because because right, operational resilience is all about that. It's about how you're connecting all these different programs into a single dashboard. But here, if you see, there are a lot more elements with respect to services that we're going to be tracking. There are going to be open incidents and crises that we usually track using our BCM product, etc. So it's again getting all the disparate sources together into a single dashboard.
Right. Can you show the one specific service like settlement?
Mm-hmm.
Can you show us the high the score of the
Mm-hmm.
one dashboard? No, I cannot see example settlement
Mm-hmm.
for business. How much, how strong the operation?
So, I mean, see, this is currently a mock-up, right? It's a Figma screen that I'm currently showing because this is still in the works, right? But if you click on any of the services that you see in the scorecards, that's where you drill down to the next level of details where you will find the information that you're looking for.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
And presumably there's a layer of MI underneath.
You can. I mean, we don't stop you from doing that. It's just that as a pre-packaged product, this is what we ship, but you always have the option to configure and get those done. Okay. Yep. Thank you so much, everyone.